So on to bipolar or Diān Kuáng. For some reason, the word chronic often has to be explained. It does not mean severe, though many chronic conditions can be exceptionally serious and indeed life-threatening. No, chronic means persistent over time, enduring, constant. Diabetes is a chronic condition, but measles is not. With measles, you contract it and then it is gone. It can sometimes be fatal, but it is never chronic. Manic depression, in other words, is something you have to learn to live with. There are therapies which may help some people to function, and function for the most part happily and well. Stephen Fry is quite a fascinating gentleman. I'm a huge fan. Not sure what your experience is with him, depending on where you live in the world. But yeah, fascinating gentleman. He is very honest, and I think that's what I like about him, is his honesty with not just his, I guess, mental health, but also his, he's an atheist, and he goes into quite a lot of detail for why he is an atheist as well. And whether you're an atheist or not, it still makes for an interesting listening to why he thinks the things he thinks is still fascinating. And he's written some really interesting books as well. So what are we going to talk about? Basically what bipolar is and what Diān Kuáng is. A quick history. We're going to really whip through this of mental illness in Chinese medicine and just of illness in general. Look at the origins of Diān Kuáng, and then look at how we might treat that from a more modern perspective in terms of the Zhang Fu patterns. Look at how you can use the Ren and the Du Mai using another acupuncturist that's been doing Chinese medicine for a long time. We're going to look at the Hun and the Gui and how you can treat someone with bipolar using that concept, which is really cool. And then I thought we'd have a little bit of fun, because the Ling Shu chapter 22 has, the chapter is on madness and insanity. So we're going to have a little look at what they say, because it's not very often that the classics necessarily give you treatment structure for stuff. Often it's just a bit of a chat between emperor and physician, emperor and various other people. And then, of course, just a bit of a caution on bipolar. So bipolar disorder, formerly called manic depression, is a mental health condition that causes extreme mood swings that include emotional highs, mania or hypomania, and lows, depression. When you become depressed, you may feel sad or hopeless and lose interest or pleasure in most activities. When your mood shifts to mania or hypomania, or less extreme than mania, you may feel euphoric, full of energy, or unusually irritable. These mood swings can affect sleep, energy, activity, judgment, behavior, and the ability to think clearly. That's a good one. Ability to think clearly. That's off the charts, not happening. So if you're expecting them to be operating a certain way because that's just the way that people operate, well, they're not going to be that. Episodes of mood swings may occur rarely or multiple times a year. While most people will experience some emotional symptoms between episodes, some may not experience any. What about Diān Kuáng? In its simplest form, Diān means depression, and it's more yin-based and more deficiency-based, and Kuáng is more mania or more yang-based, more excess-based. Happens to be a couple of your quiz questions as well. Excuse me while I clear my throat. So apart from depression, Diān can also mean not just that depressive kind of state, which is a range of things. It can be indifference, withdrawal, they feel worried, they're unresponsive, could have incoherent speech or inappropriate laughter, quiet, or maybe reluctant to talk or speak. The Ling Shu, or the text that I have of the Ling Shu, refers to it as madness. That is confusing because madness can also mean Kuang, but that is the author's prerogative to choose an English word that he thinks is the best for the Chinese character. Another option is that it's not called madness, but it's called epilepsy or falling sickness. So again, depends on the author. I think Bob Floors refers to Diān as epilepsy, and I think Unschuld refers to it as falling sickness. So don't quote me on that. But that's these different terms in order to try to translate into something that is an English term. Kuang, apart from being manic, can obviously be agitation, irritability, shouting, scolding with possible offensive speech, aggressive behavior, possibly hitting, striking out at people, inappropriate laughter or singing, wild behavior such as discarding clothing, running around, climbing to high mountains and singing, smashing things, possible increased unusual strength. And then oddly enough, they actually don't really want to eat, and not oddly at all, they don't want to sleep. Some Kuang diagnoses will have increased appetite, so that's more in line with, say, stomach phlegm. But otherwise, really, they're just doing too much stuff to stop and eat. They're not really interested in food. They just go, 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 go. But with stomach phlegm, fire, and variations on that, they tend to use the food as fuel to maintain the momentum. So the stopping for food is kind of stopping, but they're kind of eating on the run, grabbing stuff and eating, or having caffeine stimulants in order to stay up, lots of sugary foods, things that are really easy to eat without having to stop for too long, or to make it, or to physically stop and eat. And the Ling Shu refers to Kuang as insanity. And here's another quiz question. Diān Kuáng is mutually inclusive, so it's not mutually exclusive. So Diān Kuáng, you can't have one without the other. It's like yin and yang. Okay, they're mutually inclusive. There's always going to be a bit of the other. If they're not, they're not given this diagnosis. So if they're just manic, then they're just manic. If they're just depressed, they're just depressed. The only way you can diagnose Diān Kuáng, or the only way you should in Chinese medicine, is if they've got the bipolar ups and downs. Then Diān Kuáng is a diagnosis you can consider. Certainly one can become excess when the other's deficient, and that's almost always what happens. So Diān can become excess, so that's more the depressive. So whilst that's excess, you're not being very manic. It's like a seesaw or a teeter-totter. You know, you get a bigger person on the seesaw and they go down, and the one that weighs less goes up. So that's where, you know, Diān might be excess, so the seesaw is dominant there, and the Kuang is less so. So it moves between the spaces. So at any given point, when one is excess, the other is almost definitely deficient. But there is the possibility that they can be both. And you can imagine that's just quick flicking between both of them. And they have little bits and pieces of both very close to one another during the day. So you're noticing both the Diān signs and symptoms and the Kuang signs and symptoms almost at the same time. But what's likely to happen is that one dominates until the other one drops away.